Did you know that Amazon's Kindle was the result of a simple but incredibly powerful process called working backwards? In fact, every idea that comes out of Amazon goes through this same process. And today, that process is revealed in detail by Jeff Bezos' shadow. Yes, his right-hand man. It's a straight-to-the-top episode 539 of the 12-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show, where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of Start with the Customer First Marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, and you are so ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire that it absolutely deserves to be. And that is exactly why this podcast exists. It exists for you. So if you love it, hit the subscribe button now and be the cool kid on the block who gets their episodes delivered first. As per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. So today's guest, Colin Bryar, joined Amazon in 1998 as a key player of their leadership team. He's straight to the top. He then served as their vice president, and for his final 2 years was chief of staff, aka Jeff's shadow. That's what they called him in the hallowed halls of Amazon. Jeff's shadow. Jeff being Jeff Bezos, right? You know, richest man in the world. Now, since leaving the world's most successful business, he's co-authored a book titled Working Backwards, which is pretty cool. It's the central principle Amazon has used since day one to guide the creation of every one of their ideas and products. In fact, the Kindle was the first product that resulted from the working backwards philosophy. So, like, this stuff works. So pen and paper at the ready, team, as Colin shares a mountain of gold and then some. He even gives us some candid insights into his old boss. You'll never guess what car he drove until recently. I was quite surprised. I started off by asking Colin what Amazon started out as and what it is today.
Yeah, so Amazon started out as a bookseller and only in the US. And the first time I had met Jeff, it was back in 1998. The way he pitched Amazon, he said, we want to build Earth's most customer-centric company and then be the place where you can find and discover anything you want to buy. So what is Amazon today? I still think it has a lot of it wants to be Earth's most customer-centric company. That hasn't changed. What has changed is it's not only just places that you can find and discover everything you want to buy. There's web services, it's a device maker, it's makes movies, and so it's really has morphed into a bunch of other things. But one of the interesting things is that whole customer-centric theme has allowed it to branch off into a bunch of different areas that weren't even thought of at that time, quite honestly.
Earth's most customer-centric company also sounds like what Zappos are kind of positioned themselves at. In fact, Zappos have written that whole book about, what is it, creating happiness or something to that effect?
Yeah.
Similar philosophy?
Well, similar philosophy on focusing on the customer, have slightly different ways of going about doing it, but there's not one way to build a customer-centric company, and right. I think that is one of the reasons why Amazon had really pursued Zappos and wanted it to be part of the family, but it operates relatively autonomously.
Colin, amongst your roles at Amazon, you were known as Jeff's shadow, which sounds like a very ominous nickname. How did you become the right-hand man to the wealthiest and probably one of the smartest men in the world? And what did that involve, being his shadow?
I had been running the Amazon affiliate program, and we were testing around launching some web services, just doing some tests along with the affiliate program. I had been lucky enough for the year leading up to that, been working with Jeff on different areas, and he was familiar with what I was doing and how we were innovating and launching this new thing called web services, which is nothing that AWS is now. It was a different business at the time. It was taking Amazon's product catalog and exposing it to other people. And Andy Jassy, who was Jeff's previous shadow, that's just what it's called internally, chief of staff or technical advisor. It's a one-off job, so it doesn't really have a formal title.
Get my shadow.
He was transitioning out, and I actually had come home on a Friday evening, and I had got a call from my manager saying, "Hey, can you come back in? I want to talk to you about something." So I didn't live that far, so I just turned around and drove back. And he said, "Jeff is looking for a new technical advisor, and your name has come up, and he'd like to talk to you." And so I went into his office, and he asked me, and I said, "Well, can I take the weekend to think about it?" Which everyone told me I was crazy. Well, why didn't you do that? And so I spent a lot of time that weekend. I wanted to know what the role was, what success was, because it was too important of a role. If I didn't think I was the right person, I would be the first one to say, "Hey, you may want someone else at this time." And I talked to, Andy, who had been in that role quite a bit. And I was lucky enough to know someone who was the chief of staff for another Fortune 10 CEO and a government official, and they gave me good advice. And so I went back in and had that conversation with Jeff on Monday. Things happened pretty quickly thereafter. And so I switched. And so that role really entails, it's a couple things.
Before you explain what that role is, because I'm very interested in knowing what Jeff's shadow does, and please lose all humility in answering this question, Colin. What did Jeff Bezos see in you to appoint you as his shadow?
I never asked him that specifically. I was asking more about the role than me. But some of it was we were pioneering some of the web services technology. I think, and he had seen that spirit of invention, and that was probably part of it. Another one is I came from a technology background. I was software development manager to start off there, and then migrated more into general management. So I had a good understanding of how technology can help enable Amazon moving forward. And at that point in time, Jeff wanted they call it the S team, his direct reports, to become more technical. So he was looking for someone with a technical background in that role. And this is what I was saying earlier, it's a one-off role, so it kind of changes over time. And so I think I just had the right skill sets, and I had some familiarity working with Jeff during that, probably 12 months is when I was working with him on a couple of other things. So that's my guess, but I was more focused on the role than me on that. So I was very fortunate to have been asked and honored, and I took it seriously every day. And
no doubt. What does being Jeff's shadow involve? Describe a typical day or week. Does that exist?
Well, I can. So one is to just make sure he's being an effective CEO as possible. So part of it is a sounding board for some of his ideas. And it's not an operator role. I'm a builder at heart, and I realized that this was more an influencer role. And, so making sure that the teams are meeting with Jeff, it's the right people, the right issues are coming out forth, and then going out and working with teams before and after. But then the second part is longer term, as what Jeff had said, is I want to be able to model each other. So you can model what I'm thinking about issues. And when I go somewhere else in the company, that there's someone who he knows and trusts, and, has essentially gone through 2 years of training. So I joke around that that's my MBA is, 2,000 hours with Jeff for those 2 years. And so that was a longer term part of the role. You can't tell, obviously, whether that's been a success until you leave the role. So a typical day, he worked at that time, probably around 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. was when he was in. So I would get in before then and, stay a little after, kind of bookending that.
Wow. And long days.
It kind of was a blur, to be honest. It was fun. And it was context switching. It was, you could look at go deep technical and do one issue with a product team, and then turn around and talk about a marketing strategy, and then go talk about PR, and then a legal issue that came up, and that would be all in one afternoon. And so I, was impressed with how Jeff could context switch, but also bring in something that he learned from somewhere else to help solve another problem. And it didn't feel that long, though.
Colin, and by the way, we are here to talk about the working backwards principle, but I cannot avoid asking some questions about working with Jeff Bezos. So please allow me the indulgence.
Sure.
Because there are things to be learnt here. I'm sure Jeff had an executive assistant who managed his diary, but we have spoken a little bit on the show over the years about getting past the Dobermans to the person that you want to get that meeting with, that you want to talk to. Could you give us a tip? And I'm not asking how do we get to Jeff Bezos, but how do we get to someone like a Jeff Bezos in our life? How do we get that meeting?
It's a good question. So first of all, it's not something I can do is to say, here's how you can get to Jeff. I would first figure out who is the decision maker, because a lot of times Jeff would say I'm more of a switchboard operator. If something comes in, I'll look at it and I'm just going to connect it to the right person within the organization. So in a lot of cases, you're probably better off going to that other person, because Jeff, he's not going to have the information to make the decision. And so, it's kind of a waste of effort in terms of trying to get Jeff to pay attention on something, unless it's big enough to warrant the CEO. So I would figure out who's the actual decision maker at the company or organization that I need to talk to. And then it's really convincing them, you have to understand what their motivations are. They have to have a vested interest to take that call, rather than thinking I'm doing a favor. They're very busy. People like that are very busy, and their most valuable asset is how they use their time.
Great answer. I think it's a great answer. I've had a previous guest, Steve Sims, on the show, who one of his clients is Elton John, and we covered it in detail, but it's really nice to get your take on what is an ongoing challenge of, getting in front of the right person as a business owner. What was his leadership style like, Colin?
Jeff's leadership style, you talk about the 14 Amazon leadership principles. He embodies them full stop. Customer obsession and invention and thinking long-term, I would say, are the three attributes that I would, put Jeff in terms of his leadership style and how he looks at a problem. He's concerned about what will Amazon look like 5, 7, 10 years from now. And that's what his focus is on. And if there will be speed bumps along the way, but it's that long-term thinking that gets you there. Invention, he refuses to accept an outcome, and if you're boxed into something, it's how do you invent your way around it. He's obviously one of the, he is the smartest person I've ever met, and I've been in rooms with other CEOs, politicians, professors, just off the chart smart, but he's actually quite humble about that, and has the ability to really, invent and simplify is one of Amazon's leadership principles. To talk about that simplify, that is often the hardest part of invention, is to get at the core of what the issue is and then come up with a way to move forward. And, he has high standards. So, and when they're not met, you do know, but in a way that, well, sometimes they'll say the standards were not met in this case. We did not do our jobs, but it's not pounding on the table and getting mad about why didn't revenue come in at for this quarter. He will, though, be animated about what drives the business, which are the customer experience, the input metrics, we call them. So if you're a category manager of the electronics store, for instance, and you slipped and your pricing is off versus your competitor, that's something that's 100% within your control. And that was a mistake that you made. You will hear about that. But, he also, he moves and pivots then to, okay, so how can we solve that?
You and Jeff and the rest of the senior management team are up in your mahogany offices. I don't mean literally, but metaphorically. You talk about customer obsession. How does someone so high up with so many responsibilities and things to do actually remain connected to the customer?
So, one story. So tomorrow is Thanksgiving in the US. And it was 2003 or 2004. I can't remember which year. But in the fall, it was actually in early November, we had just launched our food and gourmet store, which, it's not like the grocery store that Amazon has now. So you order food and gourmet items from third-party merchants and get it shipped. And so it was the Friday after Thanksgiving, so Thanksgiving is on a Thursday in the US, I got an email and he sent it out to the S team. And he said, all of our food for yesterday's Thanksgiving dinner came from our new, and it was a Beta store at this point, the Beta food and gourmet store. And so thanks team for doing this. And then here's a list of things I would fix and change. He also walks the store, or when I worked with him, you could tell his CEOs typically when they go to retail, if they go to a city, they'll walk through their store. Saturday and Sunday mornings, starting around 6 a.m., you could see these emails coming in. He knows most features as well as the product managers who own those features. So you have to find ways to stay connected to knowing the customer experience. Some of it is just trying the different things, but another way to do it is you have to instrument whatever systems that you have to give you those customer metrics, and you can look at them and you look at them every day and you're immersed in them. Then you know when something's not right 6-12 months later, if you've been looking at a metric every day and you just see a little blip. It doesn't take a lot of time, but you have to get the right metrics to look at to do that. So those are the two things, trying, but then also really, I use the analogy of a coffee shop. If you're a single proprietor in a coffee shop, if you're out of stock on this one thing, do people just turn around and leave, or do they order something else on the menu item? Or if the store's too cold or the chairs aren't as comfortable, you have to recreate that in online business when you have so many layers, proxy layers between you and the customer experience. And you as a CEO or as a leader of the organization cannot compromise that. You have to figure out ways to get that information and to basically live and breathe it on a daily basis. So you can't be too busy to measure the customer experience.
Colin, is it urban myth or is it true that at Amazon board meetings there is a vacant seat that represents the customer?
I personally have never seen a deliberate empty chair set there. I'm not at wasn't at every meeting, but it's not a formal thing about here's a chair and this represents the customer. But I would say don't actually really need that. Just because of the way everyone lives and breathes the customer.
It's in the DNA of the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. I said it's in the DNA of the brand. Last question about the richest man in the world. What car does he drive?
I don't know what kind of car he drives right now. He started out with the Honda Accord, I believe.
Back in the day.
And then it was Audi, small SUV Audi when I was driving with him. So it was, no exotic car, no fancy thing like that. So
not ostentatious.
Reality, yeah. Yes, not ostentatious.
What are you most proud of your time at Amazon?
That's a great question. This answer changed as I wrote the book. When I look back on what we were writing about the book is really about how Amazon does it. And when I was working with Jeff, it was a very pivotal time. And so working with Jeff on how to develop some of these things about how do you get people to stop doing slides and writing narratives, the working backwards process was being developed right then too. And then, we talk about breaking out into separable small teams. That all was happening. We were learning how to be an invention machine type company. And so I feel proud to have been involved with that. And, as I talked about being a sounding board for Jeff, some of these ideas were downright crazy. And people, when we said we should go do it, people thought it was crazy when we should not do slides at meetings. So I feel proud that I was part of helping Amazon build the infrastructure and the processes to launch all of these businesses afterwards.
It's a little thing, but a big thing. You mentioned a couple of times, no slides at meetings. What you're saying is don't come into a meeting at Amazon with a PowerPoint deck and rely on that to get you through, right? Which is what we see so often in businesses all over the world. What did you do as someone who would used to come in with a deck? You just had to come in and talk? Sounds crazy.
Well, Amazon meetings are, from an outside looking in or for a new hire, they do seem kind of bizarre at first. If it's a decision-making issue or you're updating, on a monthly business review, it's a 6-page narrative and the first 20 minutes of the meeting are silent and everyone just sits down and reads. So there'll be chit chat and okay, let's start the meeting and totally silent. for about 20 minutes, and whether you're reading online and putting in comments or writing on a sheet of paper. And, if you had a different lens or filter to measure a different spectrum, what you would see is a massive amount of information being transferred from that document over to the people in the meeting. And what that does, even just the number of pixels in a written page compared to a PowerPoint slide with clip art, it's an order of magnitude different. But what that does is that transfers that information, and it allows a richer discussion to happen for the for the 40 minutes of the rest of the meeting. And so and it does two really great things. It allows you to have a much more in-depth discussion and make better decisions. And then the second thing is that a 1 hour meeting with slides and a 1 hour meeting with narratives is still an hour. But so you have to spend that time anyway. But so for an executive who's time strapped, they get a much, much deeper understanding of all of their businesses by using this narrative method, because they get so much more out of that hour than a presentation.
I love that. Now, you've written a book called Working Backwards, which is Amazon's central guiding principle. And I love the idea of working backwards. Could you explain, first of all, what it is? And then I'd love you to take us through the process.
Sure. Working backwards, it's the name of the book, but it's also it's the process Amazon uses to vet and develop new ideas and products. And the central tenet of working backwards is you start with the customer experience, and then you work backwards from that and make your decisions. And the primary tool Amazon uses is a press release and frequently asked questions, or FAQ. So the PR FAQ document. So if someone comes to Jeff or anyone and says, hey, I've got a great idea, the response is, okay, well, go write a working backwards document, and then we can go have a discussion around this idea. It pushes something back on the person or team that has the idea. The press release, it's a one-page press release. It's may or may not be the one that goes out if the product gets launched, but you have to have the elevator pitch, or the one paragraph that cleanly describes what's in it for the customer. You have to talk to the customer with this press release, and then you can have a quote from a customer or maybe a quote from the product manager, who's ever leading that product. And then the second part is the FAQ. And it's usually, there are two parts, an internal and external FAQ. The external FAQ would be things like, well, how much is this going to cost? Why is this product better than another alternative or another competitor product? What's in it for me? And the internal facts, the questions there are, how do we build this product with a bill of materials of $200 or less? We don't have a sales force now, and we need a sales force to go distribute this product. Are we going to partner with someone or build our own sales force? You talk about those hard issues up front. Most ideas go through that process over and over and over and over again. So it takes several meetings until the team feels they have a deep understanding of the customer problem they're trying to solve, and they know what are the tough issues ahead. And that's when it gets greenlit. And so that is the working backwards process in a nutshell.
So, okay, let's dig a bit deeper on that. The press release. Now, I didn't have the luxury of reading your book because it's not out for a couple of months. However, I did do some sniffing around that wonderful thing called the internet, and I found an Amazon employee who outlined the press release, the kind of key subject headlines that you need to answer. I'm going to put these in the show notes to this episode, but just tell me if I'm on the right path here, Colin. A heading, name the product in a way your target customers will understand. A subheading, describe who the market for the product is and what benefit they get. Because this is a press release you're writing for someone who's going to use it about a product that doesn't exist just yet. It's an idea, right?
Yep.
Summary, summarize the product and key benefit. Problem, describe the problem your product solves. Solution, describe how your product elegantly solves the problem. Add a quote from you or a quote from a spokesperson about the product. How to get started with the product, a customer quote, and then a closing and a call to action. Is that kind of what that one-page press release looks like?
And it has to be one page. And so the hard work is trying to encapsulate that into one page and then be able to crisply state that to where if it could be an actual press release.
Well, the obvious answer to getting it to one page, if you've got a lot to say, is doing it in like 3-point.
It doesn't work that way.
Really?
Really? I thought that was quite innovative. Once you have nailed that press release, what happens? Isn't that the start of the working backwards process? Do you then go, okay, this product is a goer. This is a great idea. What now?
Well, so it is a working document. So it's the press release and the facts. So, as you uncover different issues, you'll add some more frequently asked questions to it. Or if you discover something, a change in the marketplace, or, we actually think we're solving a slightly different problem, which you will learn along the way. So even once the project is greenlit, you still keep that up to date. And the nice thing about that is everyone on the team has that. And so everyone knows exactly what is the problem we're trying to solve, how are we going to solve it, and what are the unsolved problems that we need to go tackle. With the Kindle, it was one of the first products that went through this. And
oh, wow.
It wasn't even a Kindle at that point. It was an idea about digital books. And what happened in that, we weren't using the working backwards process in the beginning of the Kindle because it didn't exist, but we started experimenting with writing press releases and facts. But what came out is, well, what is really important for whatever this e-book experience is? And it has to be an always connected device, which seems normal now, but it wasn't before. You actually had to tether devices to a computer and download your book. The only thing that was connected was a phone and then a BlackBerry. It had to have a reader. Well, the customer experience was they had to melt away and the reader gets lost in the reading experience. So what you can't do that with typical screens, which have lights that are, a million small pixel lights shining in your eyes. So we realized we needed a different type of display device, which was the e-ink that went in the Kindle. And, massive selection. Publishers weren't doing digital books because it wasn't that big of a market. So we had to go create that. So there were several things that we knew we didn't know how to solve at that point in time, but we knew we wouldn't go launch until we had, these were the deal breakers. And the Kindle, it was a several year development process, but it kept the team focused on what was important for the customer and how can we solve those.
Hey, if my chat with Working Backwards author Colin Bryar is inspiring you to create some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours, then grab a copy of my popular marketing text, The Boomerang Effect, that'll show you how being helpful in your marketing returns you more customers and makes you more money. Ka-ching! You can grab a copy over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. Now, back to Colin.
Is the Working Backwards process, Colin, most ideal for what? For new products from scratch, for a new product feature, for a product that already exists? Can you use it for service-based ideas? Where does it shine?
So the honest answer is it works in all of those cases. So, the HR group at Amazon, if they want to launch a new health plan for internal employees, so it's not even going to be released, they'll write a press release, a mythical press release, and say, why are we moving to this new health plan? Small features on the website go through this just as much as should we get into devices and make the, an Echo and Alexa devices. So it's a simple, lightweight process. It's a sign of a good process is it's easy to learn. A lot of people can adopt, you can teach it. So it's a teachable skill. And then it's flexible in a number of different areas. It does get better the more you use it because you have good examples of here's a great working backwards document or process. And then everyone can see, this is what success looks like. Even if the product doesn't launch, most of the ideas that go through this process do not see the light of day, but that doesn't mean that it was a failure. It's designed to weed out the ideas that probably aren't big enough or aren't necessarily bad ideas, but just not the right thing to work on right now because there are other priorities to work on.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, just because it doesn't, maybe 5% of ideas that go through the working backwards process actually find their way to market? Would that be a fair stat?
It'd be interesting to do that. But yeah, the majority of ideas that go through that do not make it out to market. And what you're really doing, another thing you're doing here is you're conserving your bottleneck resources, which are, in a lot of companies, are technical software development resources because you're not building the wrong thing. you're spending the upfront time, and it's, these iterations can happen pretty quickly. Version 1, 2, 3, 4 of the working backwards document, because you haven't then, as you build software, it gets more expensive to change the more you build. So, before you can, that's what I meant about green lighting, before you actually start using some of your precious software development resources, you have to have this fully defined.
It sounds like a very creative and innovative business to work, does Amazon. I know Google, I think, give their employees 1 day a week or half day a week to just go off and blue sky think about an idea that could add value to the Google business. And, from my point of view, with small business owners who are a majority of my listening audience, we're all so busy that we don't really get time to think. We'll work the old cliche of working in, not on the business. How did Amazon encourage this kind of creative thinking? Were you given time to do it?
Part of having a spirit of invention means that people are just curious. They want to learn. And what's nice about the working backwards process is it pushes something back on the idea generator. Because, you can say, hey, I've got this great idea. And if it's not well thought through, it may sound great. But once you actually uncover all the details, you realize, it wasn't as good as I thought for those reasons. But if people are encouraged, if you have an idea on another area, write a press release and a FAQ. And that's how a lot of products get started. So you can make time to go do this. And, so the 1 day a week, I'm not sure how often that actually happens. And I'm not an expert in Google processes. I personally find it difficult to say, okay, now's my invention time. So I'm going to take off my operating time, and now I'm an inventor. And just because I'm outside and it's a nice day, these ideas are going to pop into my head. I don't work that way. Maybe some people do, but I think that where you get these ideas is really from a deep understanding of the customer experience and figuring out, where are their pain points and how can I go solve them? And, these innovations may be little innovations, but if you can have a company where you distribute that and those ideas just keep bubbling up, from all over the organization, that is often just as powerful as coming up with the next big idea. So I think that this way, Amazon does encourage people to come up with invention ideas and use this process.
Colin, you talk a lot at Amazon about obsessing over the customer. Is there any obsession over the competitor?
You pay attention to competitors, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Pricing is very important in the retail business. You have to know what your competitor is. They're selling certain items for. So there's a whole competitive intelligence group to give feedback. And again, that's a customer experience metric. Our customers, we assume at Amazon, you assume that customers have perfect information. It's nice to act that way up front. And so if they do, you have to get that same information and lower your prices. The other thing is you can look at what a competitor is doing and be inspired by it. I think copying what they're doing and generally is difficult, especially in the business Amazon's doing, because by the time you copy it, they're already on version 2 or 3. So, but you can say, this is a good idea. How can we take this idea and put our own spin on it? Forget Amazon, just whatever company you're in. Because if you purport to be the Amazon of X or the Google of Y or the Zappos of Z, they're probably going to get there. They just haven't gotten around to it yet. Yeah. So, if you have this idea, great idea, you say, well, what can we uniquely add and put a spin on this idea to really help our customers who we know better than anyone else?
Yeah, I get it. One of the things Jeff saw in you when he hired you as his shadow was, I think you said earlier, how can we better use tech? He liked the way you use tech in the business and to grow your side of the business. A lot of small business owners these days are still maybe a little bit freaked out by technology. It's not going away. There's a new bright, shiny object every other day taking our focus off what we should be doing in our business. Do you have a view, and it's a general question, but do you have a view on how business owners can better use technology to grow?
Yes. So one thing for a small business owner or any business owner, technology changes pretty quickly. So I would ask the question, what's not going to change 3 or 5 years from now versus which technology is going to be the best one? And then how can you use technology to focus on what I know is not going to change and improve that in my business? So you use it in the right way. a company that is purely started, even if it's a small business, on a single technology, you're all in on that technology already. And that's a challenging place to be unless you firmly know that that's not going to change. The second thing I would look at doing is how you use technology and how you build is actually very important. You want to keep it as separable as possible. And there's a trap you can fall into about putting a lot of hacks for quick tests. But if you keep doing that over and over again, then it gets really hard to be nimble. The technology actually is slowing you down than speeding you up. So how you can separate teams and technology is actually very important, because you want to maintain that speed as you grow, as your business idea gains traction. You want to go faster, not slower. And you don't want that technology to slow you down.
Now, speaking of technology, and I have another maybe it's an urban myth, maybe it's real, but one of the things I've read about Amazon is that they are going to do, I guess it's not happening yet, but deliveries by drone. Now, is that true?
Let me put it this way, I would not be surprised to see drone deliveries.
How does that even
Amazon
work?
and other companies.
Are we going to look up at the sky and see like 1,000 drones flying over the city of Seattle, dropping off little parcels in driveways?
I think one of the things Amazon does well is they take complex problems, they hide complexity. So if drones are the best way to get goods to customers in certain areas fast, that is a complex problem, but that's kind of what Amazon and companies do. They make complex, get rid of the complexity for customers and just make it work. So it's not drones are technology, but they're using drones to cut down on delivery time, to make it their cost structure lower. It lower the cost structure of delivery, so you can in turn lower prices. So if it's going to help the customer experience, Amazon's going to do drone delivery eventually.
What was the most amazing idea that you came across in your time at Amazon that may be not even to market yet, where you've gone, wow, really? Is that going to happen in my lifetime?
I would say that Amazon has some long-term thinking, but really the tactical of how you get there, it is a quarterly and yearly horizon. There aren't many, and certainly you don't spend a lot of time at Amazon on a 5-year or 10-year plan and projections. There are just so many things that can go wrong and that you don't know that will change. Amazon puts focus on how can we be better next week than we were this week? Where do we allocate our resources for the next 3 to 15 months? And so how do we move forward with that? So I'm going to have to take, nothing jumps out to say that when we saw this idea to say 10 years from now or 5 years from now, this is going to be fantastic.
A question for you, but you also might have heard Jeff answer it. But boy, someone coming from Amazon, is bricks and mortar retail dead in your mind? Or what role does it play going forward?
I don't think it's dead. And probably the current percentage of retail, it's 15 to 20% online, 80% offline. So it's not dead. There are some things that are not going away. I think that there are certain categories and certain use cases and customer scenarios where online does make more sense. But Amazon is also moving into physical retail. So there is a time and a place where you want to go and either check out a product or hold it with your hands or get to have the in-store customer experience. I don't think it's going away by any means. And if anything, I think that the companies that will be successful will figure out how to merge those two so you get the benefits of both.
Well, there's those examples. I think it was a South Korean subway station where there was a whole wall of photos of different food items that you took a photo of and then dropped past the supermarket on the way out to pick them up. I think there's a shoe shop in Melbourne, Australia, where again, you literally go and view the product. You can't buy the product. You have to then order it online. So maybe the way bricks and mortar retail is used will be different going forward. What bricks and mortar retail is Amazon getting into out of interest? Because it's not happening over here.
So Amazon bought Whole Foods, first of all. I think it was about a $13.7 billion. Don't quote me. I could be off by a couple $100 million, but
Chump change.
Purchase of Whole Foods. They also have Amazon bookstores where it's not just books, it's featuring the Alexa and Echo devices. And then there's the Amazon Go store, which is a cashierless type of store where you scan your phone when you walk in, and there's no cashier. It looks at their cameras all over that look at what you're taking in the cart, and you get charged on your way out. So they're experimenting with a couple of different ways. It still is in the early days on how you use some of this technology to improve the online and offline experience and how you can make them work together.
You've left Amazon now. You had some time running Reid, help me here, in Singapore.
Red Marts, an online grocer in Singapore. Yes.
Okay, that got swept up and bought because of your genius.
I wouldn't go that far.
So you've now written Working Backwards, which I really look forward to reading. I mean, unfortunately, again, it wasn't out at the time of this interview, but a fantastic philosophy that you've covered in the book. Are you then hoping that the conference circuit comes back at some point so that is your plan to be the go-to keynote speaker for all things Amazon, or what's your future look like?
The reason my colleague Bill and I wrote the book is, Amazon scaling and doing something big is in your DNA. Working with companies one-off, there are not that many days in the year to have a big impact. So the book was the first thing to really codify the secret sauce of Amazon. And then we'd like to figure out ways to work with companies to help them do it. I do believe that Amazon has fundamentally created a way to build organizations that works. It's been proven to work with digital delivery of goods, business to business service with AWS, online e-commerce, manufacturing and selling devices. So it's already proven. And then it's proven to work in small and large organizations too. Most of these processes were started either when Amazon was relatively small compared to what it is now, or they were started with a few groups within Amazon that were small. So that, the thing that we want to debunk the myth is that, well, this only works if you're a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, because I think that this can help small companies operate in what we think is just a different way than most companies are used to, and what we think can get you where you're going faster. So long-term thinking doesn't usually, at Amazon, it doesn't mean that it takes longer to get to your end goal. And the Amazon, I think, was the fastest company to $10 billion and $100 billion. And Amazon was actually, well, now they're the second fastest if you count AWS. AWS, which is a division within Amazon got to $10 billion. Amazon Web Services got to $10 billion faster than Amazon.com, the company. So, long-term thinking doesn't mean just relax and be patient. You can be long-term thinking and move very fast.
Is it true that Amazon Web Services, you just said it's the second fastest growing company within Amazon, is that right? Or the first company to get to $10 billion turnover?
Amazon Web Services got to a $10 billion turnover faster than Amazon, the company that started in 1995, by the time it got to $10 billion.
And am I right? It could be another urban myth. I obviously hear a lot of urban myths, Colin, but Amazon Web Services came about because you had a whole lot of unused space on your services that you could then sell to other businesses to use to host things?
No, I mean, that's a myth. One simple way to debunk that myth is, at Amazon, we needed it back during the holiday season. So if you rented it out to companies for the first 3 quarters, you can't take it back for a quarter. So it wasn't that. It was just that Amazon realized there was a new way to build software using what's now known as cloud computing, and that our own software development groups within Amazon were starting to adopt that. And sometimes you realize, hey, some of these internal tools that we're building on our own, we should start exposing them to other people.
Yeah, got it. Colin, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you for debunking the urban myths that I did throw at you. Clearly I shouldn't listen to them going forward. And thank you for sharing the Working Backwards philosophy, because I actually know for sure that it's going to help a lot of business owners that are struggling to bring ideas to market or to filter out the ideas that shouldn't go to market. So I look forward to reading the book, and for everyone else listening, that book will be available in all good bookstores, including Amazon and those in your local high street as well. Working Backwards is what it's called. Colin, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed this.
Well, there you go, team. Ex-Shadow to Jeff Bezos and the author of Working Backwards, Colin Bryar. What an interesting fellow with a beautifully simple process. Here's my top 3 attention grabbers from that chat with Colin. Attention grabber number 1. I love, love, love Amazon's approach to starting with the customer and working backwards. Like, it seems very obvious, but not enough business owners do it, I don't think. I hope you can start doing it now. And if you do, let me know. Let me know the outcome. I'm sure it'll be a very good one. Attention grabber number 2. I love how the working backwards approach starts with the owner of the idea writing an internal press release that announces the finished product that is yet to exist. Now, you'll find a full outline of how to write that press release over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/539. I'll put it all there for you. And attention grabber number 3, I love the idea of hiding complexity. Amazon has always been at the forefront of this type of thinking. In fact, Jeff Bezos himself wrote a book back in 2012 called One Click. I suggest you read that along with Working Backwards. That's what grabbed my attention. I would love to know what grabbed yours. Hit pause and tell me by calling the Small Business Big Marketing hotline on 0480 015 150. Just like Janine did.
Oh my gosh, Tim, Reid, it's Janine Coyle here, a photographer in Perth. You cannot believe this. I was listening to your podcast with Alabashay's CEO Pippa the other day, and when she mentioned Alabashay sponsoring the first Iron Woman series, I was the only photographer Alan Coates rang to shoot the front cover for Australasian World Ironman magazine of Carla Gilbert, winning that first series at Broadbeach Surfers Paradise in 1993. How amazing is that? Oh my God. As Janine Coyle photographer, I'm still clicking after 30 years in the Swan Valley, Perth, WA. And P.S., Charles from Max R.S. Midland referred me to listen to your podcast, and I'm loving them. I'm listening to them every minute I get. You've got so much fabulous information. Thank you for sharing. Ciao, ciao.
Janine, thank you so much. I love the fact that you're listening to my podcast every minute you get. I hope you get a lot of minutes. That Ella Bashay interview, I enjoyed speaking to her so much. There was so much gold in there. I'll put a link in the show notes for that, for anyone who missed it. And Janine, thank you for calling. Everyone else, you can give me a buzz on the Small Business Big Marketing hotline on 0480 015 150. Next episode, we catch up with neuromarketer Professor Prince Gooman, who has just launched a book called Blindsight, which is all about the way marketing works to reshape the brains of unsuspecting consumers. A little controversial, yes, but I got to tell you, bloody interesting. Prince explains why watch ads show 10 past 10 as the time, always, why McDonald's logo and Hungry Jack's logo is red and yellow, and he explains why certain stores appear to always be having a sale. You are about to enter the world of neuromarketing in the next episode, and it's a little bit scary. Hey, speaking of marketing manipulation, be sure to grab a copy of my book, The Boomerang Effect, over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. If you're loving the Small Business Big Marketing podcast, you'll find 538 other episodes. Download that, subscribe to my show. And as has been the case for the past 12 years, 12 long years, the podcast is presented by me, Timbo Reid. Until next time, team, thank you so much for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.